Walk into almost any kitchen or any office, and you will likely see it. A little machine on the counter. You pop in a small plastic cup, press a button, and out comes a single cup of coffee in seconds. No mess. No measuring. No waiting. It feels like magic. It feels like progress. But behind that little machine hides one of the cleverest and most wasteful traps ever sold to ordinary people. Let me give you one number to start with. Since these little pods first appeared, more than 100 billion of them have been sold. 100 billion. If you lined up all those little plastic cups, they would wrap all the way around the entire planet. Not once, not twice, around a dozen times over. And here's the part that should make you pause. Almost none of them ever get recycled. Fewer than 2 out of every 100. The rest, nearly all of them, end up buried in the ground, where they will sit for hundreds of years. Now here is the strangest part of the whole story. The man who invented these coffee pods, he regrets it deeply. He has said he wishes he had never made them. He does not even own one of the machines himself. So how did a simple cup of coffee turn into 100 billion pieces of buried plastic, and a trap that quietly drains your wallet for years? In this video, we are going to open up the coffee pod machine and show you exactly how it works. Because it is one of the purest examples there is of a product built to keep you paying forever. Let's start with why these machines took over the world. In one single word, convenience. Making coffee the old way took a little effort. You had to measure out the grounds. You had to brew a whole pot. You had to clean up afterward. The pod machine promised to sweep all of that away. One cup, at the push of a button, with nothing to clean. For a busy person, half awake in the morning, that sounded absolutely wonderful. And that convenience is real. That is exactly what makes the trap so powerful. It does not feel like a trap at all. It feels like a gift. But look a little closer at what you are really buying, and the picture changes fast. Here is the heart of it. The machine is not where they make their money. The pods are. You have heard this story before on this channel. It is the very same trick as the printer and its ink. Sell the machine at a friendly price, sometimes very cheap indeed, just to get it onto your counter. Because once it is sitting there, you are hooked. You cannot use that machine without the pods. And you will buy those pods again and again, week after week, for as long as you own it. And when you actually do the math on those pods, it is genuinely shocking. Coffee, bought as ordinary grounds in a bag, is quite cheap. But that very same coffee, bought inside those little pods, can cost many, many times more. You are not really paying for the coffee at all. You are paying for the tiny plastic cup, the fancy packaging, and above all, the convenience. Cup after cup, that difference quietly adds up. Over a single year, a household can spend far more on pods than they ever would have spent on the same coffee in a bag. You are paying a heavy tax every single morning just for the push of a button. Now, for a while, there was a way to fight back on the price. Other companies started making their own pods that fit the popular machines, but cost much less. Cheaper coffee, same machine. For the customer, this was great news. For the machine maker, this was a disaster. It was cutting straight into their treasure, the pods. So what did the biggest pod company do? Something that should sound very, very familiar by now. They brought out a new version of their machine. And this new machine had a secret. It would check every single pod you put in. It looked for a special mark, a sign that the pod was one of their own official, expensive ones. And if it saw an off-brand pod, a cheaper one, the machine would simply refuse to work. It would flash a message on its little screen, politely telling you that it could not brew that cup, and suggesting you go and buy the proper, official pods instead. Think about how bold that really is. You bought the machine. It sits on your counter. And the company reached right into it and made sure it would only ever accept the pods that they profit from. It is the exact same trick as the printer that blocks the cheaper ink. A machine, quietly turned against its own owner, to force you to keep buying from one company at one high price. And people were furious. They felt cheated, and they were right too. Some clever folks even found a workaround. They discovered that if you took the lid from one official pod and taped it over the little sensor, you could trick the machine into accepting the cheaper pods again. People were literally taping bits onto their own coffee machine just to get around the lock. In the end, the backlash was so strong that this lockdown machine was a flop. But the lesson is what truly matters. The company's very first instinct, when faced with cheaper competition, was not to lower its own prices. It was to lock you in and take away your choice. And it is not just the pods that get thrown away. It is the machines too. These coffee machines are often not built to last. They are made cheaply, and they are full of little pumps and heaters and valves that can clog or leak or break. When one of them fails, the repair is rarely worth it or even possible. So the whole machine goes in the bin, and you buy another one. The machine itself becomes just another disposable thing, thrown away and replaced again and again. So you have a machine designed to be thrown away that exists only to sell you little cups that are also thrown away. Waste, feeding on waste. It is disposable all the way down. Let's come back to that waste for a moment, because it is truly staggering. Remember, over 100 billion pods sold. Enough to circle the whole world a dozen times. And most of them buried in the ground. Now, the companies know that people worry about this. So they print recycling symbols on the pods, and they talk about how green they are. But here is the uncomfortable truth. These little pods are very hard to actually recycle. They are tiny. They are often made of a mix of plastic, metal foil, and leftover coffee, all stuck together in one small lump. Most recycling centers simply cannot deal with them. So even when you carefully put them in the recycling bin, the vast majority still end up in the landfill anyway. In fact, the claims about how recyclable these pods really were got one big pod company into serious trouble. Officials found that the company had made misleading statements about it, and the company was made to pay a large fine over the matter. The green promise, it turned out, was more about making you feel good than about actually saving the planet. And this brings us right back to the man who started it all, the inventor of the coffee pod. He created it decades ago with a simple idea. One perfect cup of coffee, quickly. He sold off his share of the company early, for a fairly small sum, long before it grew into a giant. And as he watched his little invention spread across the entire world and slowly turn into mountains of buried plastic, he came to regret it. He has said, quite plainly, that he feels bad about what he created. He has pointed out that no matter what the companies say, those pods will never truly be recyclable. And most tellingly of all, he does not even use one himself. Think about that for a second. The very person who dreamed up the coffee pod looked at what it became and decided he wanted no part of it. When the inventor himself walks away from his own creation, it tells you just about everything you need to know. So who wins here? The pod companies, of course. They put a cheap machine on your counter and then sell you expensive little cups forever. They lock out the cheaper competition. They sell you a whole new machine when the old one dies. And they wrap the entire thing up in a green ribbon that does not quite tell the truth. It is a perfect money machine. And who loses? You do. You pay far more for your daily coffee than you ever needed to. And the planet loses, badly. 100 billion little cups, and counting, buried in the earth, for a few minutes of convenience each. And by now, you know this pattern in your bones. It is the razor and blades. It is the lockout, taken straight from the printer's playbook. It is the disposable machine. And it is the endless flood of waste. Different product, same old game. Get the machine into your home, and then make you pay, and pay, and pay, for the little things it needs to run. So how do you fight back? Happily, with coffee it is easy. First, if you love your pod machine, get a reusable pod. These are little refillable cups, made of metal or sturdy plastic, that you fill with your own coffee grounds and use again and again. You still get the one-cup convenience. But now you buy cheap coffee in a bag, and you make almost no waste at all. It cuts your cost, and your plastic, down to almost nothing. Second, consider the simple, old ways of making coffee. A basic drip machine, a French press, a little pot for the stovetop. These make wonderful coffee. They cost very little to run, and there are no pods to buy or throw away, ever. Many people who switch back are shocked at how much money they save, and at how good the coffee tastes. Third, if you are buying a machine, be very careful of the ones that lock you into a single brand of pod. If a machine only works with its own special pods, that is a lifetime of high prices by design. A machine that lets you use any pod, or better yet a reusable one, gives the power right back to you. And most of all, remember the trick. The cheap machine is the bait. The pods are the hook. And the daily convenience is the thing that keeps you from ever noticing how much you are really paying in money and in waste. So the next time you drop a little pod into a machine and press the button and toss the used cup in the bin, take just a moment to see the whole picture. See the 100 billion cups. See the money quietly leaving your pocket, one brew at a time. See the man who invented it all, shaking his head at what it became. It was never really about the coffee. It was about getting a machine onto your counter, one that would keep you paying and keep the world filling with plastic, one perfect cup at a time. This is just one machine in your kitchen. On this channel, we keep opening them up and showing you the traps hidden inside the everyday things you trust. Because once you can see how they are built to keep you paying, you can finally choose the simple ways that set you free. So stick around. There is a whole lot more to uncover.